Is justice merely a matter of opinion, shaped by culture and history? Or is there a deeper truth we can uncover about how we ought to live? If values are only historical, then no value is truly right or wrong. We float, unmoored.
Welcome to Bookscape Epic Reads, where we dive deep into the world of popular books, exploring timeless classics and modern bestsellers alike. Join us for in-depth reviews, insightful discussions, reflections. Let roll.
We are not the first to ask what justice is, nor will we be the last. But the way we ask that question, and whether we believe there is an answer at all, has changed drastically. This is the crisis of modernity. In Natural Right and History, Leo Strauss begins not with abstract speculation or theoretical jargon, but with a profound concern, one that touches the very heart of modern civilization. It is the concern that our time has lost the capacity to distinguish between right and wrong in any objective, rational, or universal sense. We still speak of justice, rights, and freedom, but increasingly, these words ring hollow. They sound like echoes from a past whose foundations we no longer understand or believe in. Strauss calls this the crisis of modernity, and it is no ordinary crisis. It is not a political event or a social disruption. It is a philosophical rupture, a crisis of belief in the possibility of natural right. In previous centuries, especially in the classical tradition of Plato and Aristotle, philosophers believed that there existed a natural order, a logos, a rational structure to reality, and that human beings, through the use of reason, could grasp their proper place within it. Justice was not a matter of opinion, convention, or will. It was a reflection of human nature, of what we are and what we are meant to be. To live justly was to live in accordance with that nature. But modern thought, says Strauss, has broken with that view. In the name of progress, in the pursuit of liberation, modern philosophy has rejected the very idea that nature has a purpose, or that human beings have an essence. Modern science, especially after Machiavelli and Hobbes, abandoned final causes, teleology, and embraced a purely mechanistic view of nature. Nature in this view is not meaningful, it simply is. And if nature is silent on the question of the good, then what becomes of ethics? What becomes of politics? This is where historicism enters the scene. Historicism is the belief that all human values are historically contingent. What we call justice or virtue is not grounded in nature or reason, but in time, culture, power, and context. The Greeks had their values, the Romans theirs, the medieval Christians theirs, and we moderns have our own. According to historicism, none of these systems is truer than the others. They are simply expressions of different historical circumstances. This view might sound tolerant, even wise. It encourages humility and warns against ethnocentrism. But Strauss sees in it a deep and dangerous relativism. If all values are historically relative, then no value can be judged superior to another, not even those that condemn tyranny, cruelty, or genocide. In the absence of a higher standard, evil cannot be named, only explained. The philosopher becomes a historian of ideas, not a seeker of truth. Even more corrosive is positivism, the claim that only scientific facts are real, and that values are nothing more than preferences or emotions. Under the banner of objectivity, positivism banishes questions of right and wrong from serious discourse. Justice becomes subjective, a matter of taste, like whether one prefers jazz or classical music. Politics, stripped of moral content, becomes the management of competing interests. Philosophy retreats, and technocracy rises. Strauss refuses to accept this decline. He believes that the abandonment of natural right is not a sign of progress, but a profound loss of moral orientation. It deprives us of the ability to speak meaningfully about justice, virtue, and the common good. It renders the philosopher mute in the face of power, the citizen apathetic before injustice, and the student cynical about the possibility of truth. So Strauss sets out to recover something long buried but not dead. The classical idea of natural right, the conviction that human nature has an intelligible structure, and that justice is not an invention, but a discovery. He seeks not to impose dogma, but to reopen the question of the good, the question that once animated Plato and Aristotle, Aquinas and Maimonides. The crisis of modernity, then, is not just the loss of belief, it is the loss of questioning itself. We no longer ask what is good, but only what is efficient. We no longer ask what is just, but only what is permitted. In recovering the classical tradition of natural right, Strauss hopes to revive not just old answers, but the spirit of philosophy itself, the search for what is right by nature and not merely by convention. This is not an easy journey. It requires courage, clarity, and patience. But Strauss insists, if we wish to understand justice, not as a slogan, but as a reality, we must begin by recognizing the depths of our own confusion. Only then can we hope to climb out of the cave and once again turn our eyes toward the light. To recover natural right, we must return not only to old texts, but to an older way of thinking, a way rooted not in power or utility, but in nature and reason. Modernity, Strauss tells us, has forgotten something. In our pursuit of freedom, autonomy, and technical mastery, we have discarded a vision of justice that once animated the very heart of political life. That vision, the classical view of natural right, is not based on subjective desire or social contract, but on a deeper, more demanding foundation: human nature and rational order. To understand the classical notion of natural right, we must journey back to ancient Greece, to the thought of Plato and Aristotle, who did not treat philosophy as abstraction, but as a form of life, a quest for the good that belongs to us as human beings by nature. For the classical thinkers, human beings are not rootless, shapeless creatures. We have a specific nature, a distinctive essence. Just as the eye exists to see, the seed to grow, and the heart to beat, so too does the human being have a telos, a natural end or purpose. This teleological worldview stands in sharp contrast to the modern mechanical vision of nature. The world is not a random collection of atoms in motion, but a rationally ordered whole in which every being has its proper function. From this vision emerges a bold claim: justice is natural. It is not merely a social construct or an act of will. Justice, for the ancients, is rooted in the structure of reality itself. To be just is to act in accordance with the nature of things, including our own nature. It is to recognize that the human soul has a hierarchy: reason, spirit, and desire, and that a just life is one in which reason rules, both in the soul and in the city. Take Plato's Republic, for instance. In it, Socrates does not begin by defining justice through rules or contracts. Instead, he embarks on a search for the just soul, the well-ordered city, the nature of the good itself. Justice, Plato argues, is not simply a matter of obeying laws or avoiding punishment. It is a condition of harmony, where each part does its proper work, guided by reason toward the good. This idea of justice as natural order is not rigid or simplistic. The classical view recognizes that natural right is contextual. What is right for one person may not be right for another. What is just in one regime may not be in another. But this variability does not mean justice is arbitrary. Rather, it reflects a deeper truth, that nature expresses itself through form, through essences, and through rational discernment. Thus, the classical conception of natural right is universal in principle, but flexible in application. No thinker develops this idea more systematically than Aristotle. In his Nicomachean Ethics and Politics, he describes the human being as the zoon politikon, the political animal. Human beings, by nature, live in communities not out of necessity alone, but because we possess logos, speech and reason. We are capable not only of expressing pain or pleasure, like animals, but of deliberating about justice and the good. This capacity grounds the very possibility of law, ethics, and political life. For Aristotle, justice is the virtue that governs our relations with others. It is the habit of giving each their due, of acting in accordance with right reason for the sake of the good life, not merely survival, but flourishing, eudaimonia. Politics, then, is not a technology of power, but a branch of ethics. The purpose of the state is not to maximize liberty or wealth, but to cultivate virtue, to form citizens capable of living well together in light of what is good by nature. And yet the classical thinkers were not naive. They were fully aware of the fragility of justice in political life. Plato's dialogues are filled with irony and doubt. Aristotle recognizes the corruptibility of regimes, but they never surrendered to nihilism. They maintained that truth exists and that human beings, through reason and education, can come to know it, even if only partially. Here lies the heart of Strauss's appeal. In an age where values are treated as preferences and politics is reduced to procedure, the classical view reminds us that justice is not a matter of consensus, but of nature. Not what we will, but what we are, defines the good. Strauss insists that we have something to learn from the ancients, not just a theory, but a posture of humility before the order of being, and a commitment to seeking the true and the good, even when the world resists us. The ancients invite us to consider that reason is not merely instrumental, but normative, not a tool for getting what we want, but a guide for understanding what we ought to want. In recovering the classical view of natural right, Strauss does not propose a return to a bygone world. He knows we cannot undo history, but he urges us to reopen the question, to take seriously the possibility that human beings have a nature, that reason can grasp it, and that from this nature flows an enduring standard of justice.